I'm announcing today that next year, at the end of my term as Police and Crime Commissioner, the first Police and Crime Commissioner for Essex, I'm going to retire. I'm sure that may be what most of your questions will be about. But I also want to mention two other things. The first is, of course, I'm just completing my year as a chair of the Association of Police and Crime Commissioners, which has been really an exciting and demanding and really fulfilling year. But thirdly, also to point to what is a really important way ahead for policing in Essex. I believe the Chief Constable and I have, over the last couple of years that I've worked with him, have been turning around Essex Police and moving it towards a really exciting future. And I'd like to say a little bit about that, because this really is more about the future than the past. So you all got a copy of the statement. You'll be pleased to know I'm not going to read that. You can pick from that as you wish. The first thing to say is that it's been an immense privilege to be Police and Crime Commissioner for Essex. I had no idea what the role was going to be about. I don't think anybody could possibly have done before we started this journey. I took a bit of persuading. It was a sensible thing to take on. And when I think back, it was 4 years ago now that I was first having those discussions. I didn't know how it would work out. I didn't know even if it was a good idea. But having been elected, and in the run-up to that election, I realised what an opportunity there was, a really very significant opportunity to really try and refocus policing on what matters to everybody across Essex. And it's been, as I say, a privilege to work with Stephen Kavanagh, who I appointed, of course. That was probably the first and probably the most important decision I took during my time as Police and Crime Commissioner, to appoint him as Chief Constable, working with him to address three things, really. I suppose, firstly, it's the day-to-day good running of Essex Police, the governance. That's at the heart of what Police and Crime Commissioners are about. Me holding him to account on behalf of everybody who lives in Essex to make sure we get really good policing. It's hard work. It is really hard work, and it takes a skilled team that I've built here, and perhaps I could pay tribute to the team that we have recruited and perhaps developed. I think I played a part in that, to carry out that work, the scrutiny work that goes on day by day to make sure Essex Police is as good as they can be. The second really crucial thing, and it's a journey that has not been very visible to most of you, but is setting the foundations for the strategic future of Essex Police. And I think many of you will know that in September we'll be making major announcements about the estate, about technology, about a whole range of issues, for example, public contact with the police. That's a really important programme, and we're not going to slacken the pace on that. That future, that strategic thinking, frankly, I think have been missing in the past, and it's something that we've had to work very hard to make up the deficit. And the third thing, which I think has been the most fun part, and has brought me into contact with many of you, is getting out and about and trying to rebuild that contact between the police and the public they serve. You know, the many public meetings that I've held, which I think always, I'm just trying to think, I don't think I've ever held a public meeting which hasn't had the police at my side. The whole point is to be able to get the Essex Police meeting their public, and me hearing that exchange between them. Some of you have been to those meetings, and that's how I understand and know what communities right across Essex, from Newport to Southend, or from Thurrock to Harwich, what they're feeling about crime and policing in their communities. Of course, some of the realities are tough. We've done this. Wouldn't have been great to do this against a period of expanding budgets, but it hasn't. We've had to do it during a time of reductions in budget, and there's no hint that those aren't going to continue. It looks almost certain that we're going to have to continue to make very significant reductions to Essex Police, and that makes what we're trying to do even more challenging, but actually even more necessary. My only regret is that at a time of plenty in the past, those who were then leading Essex Police and responsible for the governance of it had not laid down those strategic futures that I think should have been done, and we're now doing, but at a more difficult time. So as we think about that, to bring on to a second point, we've launched today a very, very minor revision minor but important revision to our police and crime plan. Some of you will have got to know our police and crime plan a bit. We haven't changed it for the first 2 years. This year, the only crime type that was ever mentioned in it was domestic abuse, and I think you all know very well the reasons why we majored on domestic abuse and why we're going to continue to keep that focus. We absolutely have to keep that focus, because while Essex Police has made tremendous progress, it's by no means at the end of the journey. It needs to get to get to the end of before we're satisfied that we're getting it absolutely right. There's still more to do. But as I've learned through doing this role, things I had no knowledge about before at all, the hidden harms in our societies that are going on, the child abuse, the child sexual exploitation, the human trafficking, the issues of forced marriage, of FGM in our communities. These are things that are all happening behind closed doors, and they're things that do cause some of the greatest harms in our society. We've then got the other, organised criminals and others who are now, using the internet to prey on all of us, every one of us. Every one of us is a target for fraudsters, and particularly our elderly members of our families and our communities. But those things that happen behind closed doors. So you'll have heard me say before that, the front line of policing now really is the front room, and it's very difficult and complex policing to do. There's a bit of a debate running, and I think there's an interview reported in the Times today. The notion of Bob is on the beat, keeping our communities safe. My view is the local policing is absolutely crucial. The notion of Bob is on the beat is an outdated notion. We need expert, skilled detectives, investigators who can investigate online crime, who can attain best evidence from children who've been the victims of sexual abuse, who can work with vulnerable women and men who are victims of domestic abuse. These are skilled activities. They require very skilled and specialist resources, and Bob is on the beat really don't cut it. If they ever did. Of course they were necessary when we didn't have radios and cars and all of those things. So the future is going to be different. We need very highly professional police officers. There'll be fewer of them. They need to engage with their communities in modern ways. Isn't it shocking that you can't report a crime by email to Essex Police? You can't do those things online. The things that we've been doing are banking transactions that we've been doing for 20 years. I've certainly been using online banking for 17 years to my clear recollection, that we can't do those secure communications with our police. We have to force the pace of that, and we have to modernise and professionalise our police so that we can deal with them in the ways that we want to. It's been great as Police and Crime Commissioner to bring a really different way of doing business with this. We've been able, through our office and through imaginative use of a small amount of funds, to really stimulate those wonderful groups and individuals around Essex, and you know them and you'll work with them and you'll see many of them who are doing that great work in their communities. We've been able to stimulate that and attract very significant funding into Essex by seed funding small projects that have grown and grown. And that again is the way of the future. It's about communities taking responsibility, working with the police and other agencies, getting police working better with social care, with the health service. And yes, we all know the health service in Essex is immensely challenged, but the health service itself must find time to work with partners to ensure, particularly in the area of mental health, that we're working with those who so frequently are vulnerable to crime and too often get involved in causing crime as well. It's a complex web of partnership working that we absolutely need to sponsor. So I decided that I'm going to stand down next year. No need for the facts are I'm 64 next year. I was fishing for a compliment, I won't. I'm 64 next year. Sure. Thank you very much. I would love to think that I could bring the energy I brought to this for another 4 years. I think that's wrong. I think this is work for vigorous people in their prime. More particular, I've got a growing family. I've got 3 wonderful grandchildren. When people say they're going to spend time with their wife and families, well, I genuinely am. It was our wedding anniversary yesterday. I've been married 41 years, and we've got 3 grandchildren. My son's a colonel in the army. He's doing an extremely demanding job. We love spending time with them. I have my daughter who teaches in London, has a new baby, and I am as committed to my family as I am to my job. I've worked for more than 35 years in the public sector. I had 5 years wonderful working with Goldman Sachs in the commercial sector, which was a privilege and extremely hard work. I think after 40 years I've kind of done my bit. I am going to look on with some envy to those who carry on this work. Essex is really on the brink of some wonderful opportunities. With the devolution debate now going very strongly, there's the opportunity for us in Essex to really transform how we deliver public services. The police must be part of that. I want them to be part of that, and I'm sure that they will be. The opportunities for economic development in Essex, are again, now we're on the verge of something that we haven't had for many years, and I hope those who are responsible take that opportunity. In a way, I'd love to be part of it, and I can assure you that taking this decision was extremely difficult. I took the decision over really, in effect, over 3 months. I took the decision, let it soak, tested it, went away for a week, and for me it is the right decision, but it's a difficult one because this is an important role. Essex Police has got a major part to contribute to the development of the county. It's got a long way to go, and I'd love to be part of that future, but I'm sure it's right for me to take this decision. I think probably I've said more than enough to get the conversation going. Jan will have organised you, he certainly organises me, about how we're going to do this, but I think I'm very happy to take questions. I'm really in your hands, and perhaps I could also take this opportunity for thanking the media, both the print and the broadcast media in Essex, for taking a really, I think, a terrific interest in what I've been doing. And many of you around the table I've got to know really very well. You've taken a real interest in this work, and it's right to take an interest. It's important work, and I think you've helped that. You've helped the maturity of the role, and I hope you'll continue to do so. So thank you for what you've done.
Q&A. If any reports have got follow-ups, one-to-one directly, you're most welcome to do that. Steve, I mean, you. Yeah. No. What? I won't waste it. Yeah. I won't waste any more time. Then, please. Who wants to ask the first question there? Steve.
How have you been able to look so young in such a demanding job?
Stephen, we'll rely on you for some great questions. I love the job. For me, sadly, no, it wasn't. I absolutely love the job. It's energising. I'm working with fantastic people in Essex Police. Meeting the new recruits, meeting the specials who join. It's tough, and there's some really tough conversations. They're often behind closed doors with the Chief Constable, or those you've seen, hopefully you've seen, as we put on the website with the Essex Police Challenge, and some of you have come to those meetings. That is demanding work. But I've loved every job I've done, and I love this one. It's been very hard to give up.
You say bobbies on the beat don't cut it. If they ever did, isn't that a slap in the face for bobbies on the beat who? Presumably out in the community they would have been the eyes and ears. Certainly now they're needed more than ever with terrorist alerts and being in the community. You can't just wipe them away as if they're an irrelevance.
Local policing is really important, Sally. Of course it is. We need our police to be connected with our communities. But if I've got 2 officers, would I rather they were kind of walking around the streets, or would I rather one of them was a schools officer, spending that time working with the schools, in the schools, getting to know them, working closely with them? Would I rather the other one was working, with the street triage, working with those who are facing some of the challenges, the mental health challenges? There aren't going to be enough police officers to do everything. And rather than walking the streets, the focused local activity, working with partners, working with schools, working with businesses, business crime matters. Yes, of course, police need to be connected with their communities. I just really doubt, and I think there's very little evidence that officers walking around communities really do cut it in the way that you're suggesting.
In the past, the conversation about bobbies on the beat hasn't been so much about solving crime, it's been about also the public reassurance and people having the opportunity to report crimes because they've seen the police, and the reassurance and the fear of crime have been things that police have been speaking about. Do you think now there just aren't the resources to worry about fear of crime? The officers you have to actually just investigate the crime we've already got. Is that why you don't think bobbies on the beat have such a significant role in the future?
There are 2 or 3 things caught up in that. Public confidence, fear of crime, really, really matter. We absolutely want to get our police thinking, creatively about how to give public confidence, how to deal with that perception of crime. It's remarkable that over the last 15 years, crime in Essex has plummeted, of all sorts. Okay, the last year or 2, it's kind of stabilised, although most crimes like to affect us, it continues to fall. Last year, burglaries down over 10%. So crime's come down, but the public perception isn't the same. Public perception is that the crime it has got worse. Public perception and public confidence has dropped off. So clearly the police aren't getting it right. Now, is that solved by officers walking around the streets who are not going to be tackling the harms? They're not going to be responding to crime. They're not going to be investigating things. Are they really going to do that perception, build that perception, or should the police be thinking really creatively about how to spread the message about the reductions in crime, about how the public should contact the police, about what the reality is that's going on in their communities, and work with communities to make them safer. Fear of crime really matters, perception really matters, but I think we could be much more creative about how we address it.
Terror threats gone up. So, for example, officers working in local communities with people in mosques and so on, there's no visibility there, and building of contacts. That is going to undermine the potential to have more people on the streets feeding back.
Sally, I think that's exactly what I'm saying, that we need it's same as burglary. So burglary hasn't reduced because the police have got lots of patrols. They're doing targeted, problem-oriented policing. They know there's a problem. They have a response, a research-based response to it. If we know that there's problems with the mosques, then they have officers whose job it is to get out there, work with the mosques, build that community confidence.
They don't have enough of them, that's what they're saying.
Well, they certainly won't if their bobbies out on the beat just walking around. We need that targeted local policing, and that has to happen. I completely agree that targeted work must happen. That's not the same as bobbies on the beat. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying local policing doesn't matter. It absolutely matters, but it needs to be targeted on the things that make a difference. Schools work, youth work, working with the integrated offender management that happens in our communities, working with mental health, working with faith groups. Those are the things that will make a difference, not bobbies on the beat.
Does your view clash with the Home Secretary's, where we were always promised more bobbies on the beat and more community policing?
I don't think the Home Secretary has promised that. What she has promised is let police and crime commissioners work out what's going on in their communities and let them take responsibility for it.
On the domestic violence, you said that that's one area of crime that you put out there the first police and crime plan. There are still major problems with domestic violence, and there's still major problems with child abuse. There's countless IPCC investigations into Essex Police at the moment regarding the child abuse. Do you worry that you're leaving the job half done, that you've highlighted the problem, but you haven't come up with the solution, and by leaving, the next crime commissioner might have different priorities, and it might just be a problem highlighted but not solved?
It won't be solved. We won't have finished the work by the time I retire next May. That's clear. But what we have done, and remember those IPCC referrals for child abuse, for example, all referred by Essex Police. We've introduced a culture whereby Essex Police is taking the initiative in being open and transparent about the problems it uncovers. So yes, there's going to be, the job definitely won't be done. It won't be done, I don't think it'll be done for 5 years. Certainly the estate's transformation programme is probably a 10-year programme rather than a 5-year programme, as you'll hear more in September. But if you don't start, you never start. And so we have to get going. I never imagined, in fact, the Chief Constable and I, when we sat down, Stephen Kavanagh, soon after his appointment, and we sat down to plan what was really important, what we should be focusing on. We both recognised at that stage this work won't be done by the time we probably both go. The time of my departure is known. Stephen Kavanagh pledged to give at least 4 years to this role, so he'll have at least a year further beyond me. The work definitely won't be done, but we have to set those foundations. You have to build foundations before you can build a house. But I think we're already seeing change. Some of it's slower than I'd like, of course it is, but that change is happening.
You've been really vocal in criticising the police when they've gone wrong, failures. We've had IPCC involved, we've had the Goldfinger fiasco, we've had domestic violence failings, we've had COP and the failure to act on child abusers. We've had all of that. Do you think overall the quality of policing has gone down? They've missed a murder under their nose. They've done things that have been monumentally bad in terms of standards of policing overall. What is your take on the standards and quality of policing now, especially when older officers are being forced to go?
Nobody's been forced to go but not in Essex though. So and some of your language is not language I would use. Have I been challenging of Essex Police? Yes, of course I have. As has the Chief Constable. He is being every bit as challenging as I am. Is the force as fully professional as or he would want it to be, or indeed Essex Police officers themselves want it to be? No, it's not. Is that something what's the root cause of that? I think it goes back a long time. The failure to train detectives, the failure to give the specialist training that you need for those in child abuse investigations and others. That goes back many years, where the focus was, let's get uniformed bobbies on the beat. Look at the consequences. We need a specialist, highly professional police force. Could Essex Police be doing better? It is doing better. It's got a way to go.
No.
It's got a way to go. I mean, it's hard to say, isn't it? I I think the change, I think we've got lots of really good officers joining Essex Police. We've got really great leadership at the top. I think we're now having middle managers who are refinding their confidence as middle managers and are being encouraged to develop the skills to do it really well. One of the advice, I'm probably the least effective politician in Essex. I haven't got a political background, and a lot of people said, "Oh, you need to keep your powder dry. Don't tell anybody what you're thinking." But everything I've done in this office has been open and transparent. We've hidden nothing. I couldn't have been clearer with all of you about the issues. For me to go forward, not letting you know that I've taken this decision would just be wrong. It's just not how I do things. Do I think I'm a lame duck? Absolutely not, because remember, I've got those executive powers up till the last day. It's a very curious role, this role. We're still getting used to it, and I think at a national level, I think actually as a group of journalists, you probably understand this role far better than the national journalists. That's my experience, certainly as chair of the APCC. The national journalists still based in London don't really get what PCCs are about. So I'll have that power up to the last day, and I intend to stay very vigorous to the last day. I've got nearly a year to run. It's 10 months to run. That's a big part of the 3.5 years of this first term. So I intend to stay very vigorous. But am I conscious? Yes, I do think about that. The example, the council tax decision next year. You all heard me say I would like to put up the policing precept significantly next year. I think we are not paying enough for our policing in Essex. And there is a risk that we really will see those consequences of having a very low council tax precept for policing. I would like to put it up significantly. A tough decision for me to take when I'm then going to retire, more or less at about the same time. I think it'll be a great question for those who are standing, their view on it. And I would want to see somebody who's prepared to take those tough decisions as I've taken year by year.
Nick, can I just take down to Thurrock for a minute? Over the last funny you decided your time now, over the last 3 weeks, day in, day out, people in Thurrock have been saying to me, what is going on in our borough? And I think my answer or my question would be, what you've done is turn the police into a fire service. And the fear of crime, the perception of violent crime, from arson to attempt murder to large disturbance in Tilbury, the people are very, very concerned. Your legacy is turning the police force into a fire service. And by the way, Bobby and the Beat found the Yorkshire Ripper.
Well, I don't accept that what we have done has turned the police into a fire service. In fact, a lot of the things that we're doing absolutely are not that. We've been devoting very large amounts of resource from, if you like, response work into those specialist areas of child abuse and domestic abuse. We've had to do that. We've built up increasingly large online investigation team. They don't always get it right. You've heard an example when they didn't, but they get a lot more right than goes wrong. I think in Thurrock you've got some great officers doing some really good work. You've still got a very good team of PCSOs doing some extremely effective work. Do you have challenges? Yes, of course we have challenges. And when we have perhaps a string of robberies or a string of violent incidents, it's very easy to imagine that it's all going to hell in a handcart. It's not, and you look at the facts, speak for themselves. The increases in crime have been the reporting of serious sexual offences, and thank God people are now reporting those, of domestic violence, and thank goodness people again are reporting those. Is there occasional violence? Yes, of course, there always has been, and there always will be, Michael.
You've spoken in the past about child abuse, particularly iceberg. It may be a surprise to some that it isn't one of the key areas. It just comes into one of the key areas. Is there the reason why you didn't make that a key area?
Well, I think some of you may know, I'm even slightly surprised that the Home Secretary elevated child abuse to be part of the strategic policing requirement. And, I completely understand the harm it causes. There can't be a worse crime, can there, than child abuse. In Essex, every day a child is raped. That's pretty shocking stuff. And they're the ones we know about. How many? There must be others where it's happening that we don't know about. Of course, it needs to be a priority for Essex Police. The Chief Constable must set those operational priorities. I'm not one of those PCs who's saying do this, do that, do the other. I'm just trying to say these are the areas. These are the areas of focus. Is what I want you to keep in mind as you set your operational priorities. I thought domestic violence deserved its space when I took over, because let's remember the facts. Burglaries dropped when I took over. Burglaries, there were 22 a day, now there are 18 a day across the whole of Essex, house burglaries. There are still over 80 emergency calls to domestic violence. You know, those. So that's why that was there. But I don't want to tell the Chief Constable crime type by crime type, but by talking about hidden harm and making it clear in that hidden harm section that includes child abuse and child sexual exploitation, I still think we are at risk of not noticing that that could be happening under our noses.
Would you prefer it to be a key priority?
No, I think hidden harm is the right way of saying it. You know, we've just look at the recent weeks. We've just uncovered a brothel in Malden of all places with trafficked Romanian sex slaves being run in a brothel in Malden. You know, if that's happening under our noses, we can't. I think the more you focus on one crime type, you take your eye off other things. That district commanders, the chief constable have to balance these things. It's for him to balance that. Child abuse is shocking. You'll understand the facts. Overwhelmingly, it happens within families. That's still the reality. And these are complex problems that need really careful work between police and social care. They're difficult to take to court. They're difficult to get the safeguarding right. The police have to confront those difficulties. But the numbers, shocking numbers. But look at all the other things that go on. And some, you've heard me say before, road safety. Is road safety a priority? 740 people killed and seriously injured on our roads last year. More than 40 people killed, and that number increasing. These are shocking things. It's the wisdom of Solomon to try and balance those. I need to support the Chief Constable as he thinks through those harms, that threat, risk, harm equation. I think the more that we focus on individual crime types, the more you could have a distortion. But does it matter? Of course it matters greatly.
If the government were to do a U-turn and just say, look, cuts in policing have gone too far, there aren't enough officers, we need more funding here and more investment, would you also do a U-turn and say, actually, there is a chance now to do something? Essex effectively has the PCC's job become an impossible job in the next 4 or 5 years?
No, it hasn't become. It's become an all the more necessary job, I think, absolutely the more necessary, because if you look at failures of policing, and again, some of you heard me say this many times, if you look back at all of the failures, and they're manifold, aren't they? There have been many failures of policing across the country over the last 30 years. In every case, there was also a failure of governance. For every chief constable who got it wrong, there was a police authority who let them get it wrong. And we cannot go back to those days. We must have effective governance where there's a professional. It's not just me. This is a professional staff. My office. Which was still running at about the same cost as the old police authority. It's probably increased just slightly because we've now all the commissioning work that we have to do with the money we've been given by government. But we now have a really professional staff who day by day are looking into the entrails of what Essex Police are doing. That's going to stay really important. The Chief Constable is going to need that continuing challenge. If you haven't seen it, it's worth looking yesterday on my day off on my wedding anniversary. I watched the Parliament, the PAC, Public Accounts Committee, with Sir Tom Windsor, Alex Marshall, and Mark Sebwell giving evidence on police business and management competencies. Policing is a very sophisticated business. It needs a detailed understanding of a whole raft of things, including technology, including procurement, all of those issues, estates management. Are police officers as good as they should be at managing those very large budgets and those complex programs and projects? You look at the failure of police IT over the years, an absolute nightmare. Trying to get good governance that absolutely supports and challenges chief constables to get that right. A very good exploration of that at the PAC yesterday, and PCCs did not get enough mention of that. It rather makes my point that PCCs are not well enough understood at the centre. Sir Tom Windsor spoke at length about PCCs in his evidence yesterday. You could see I think too many of the PAC did not understand the significance of PCCs, and I'd like to have seen the Home Office and indeed Alex Marshall saying a bit more about our role too in that.
Looking at the future of police, obviously you talked about bringing the force into the internet age a bit more, and the fact that you can't report crime by email and that sort of thing. Could we perhaps see in the near future, partly as part of the estates work, maybe kind of an internet hub, an internet headquarters for Essex Police, and also perhaps the possibility for people to report crimes over Skype and other means such as that?
Yes, you'll see and you'll hear all about that in September. A part of the estate strategy. very, very few people go to police stations. That's the reality. Essex Police have, 1 million telephone calls, over 1 million telephone calls a year. That's how most people communicate with the police. But most of us, doing most of our business these days, do it online. Most people, I think, will be most comfortable having, secure online communication with police. It's in the way that we do with most other organisations. We need a rich mix of ways of contacting Essex Police. Yes, there will be times when you want to go and talk to a police officer. We need to make sure we can facilitate that, and it's possibly even easier and more comfortable than it is now. Standing at a drafty counter is not a great way of dealing with a police officer. So there will be, a radical change to police contact, which we will be announcing in September and delivering relatively quickly.
So what is the real reason why you're retiring? Is it getting too hot for you?
Certainly not. It really is a privilege doing this job, Steve. I very much enjoy it. I'm giving up next year with some real regrets. I'd love to keep going. But the fact is, as I said, I'm 64 next year. The idea of doing this till I'm 68 and missing, another 4 years of my grandchildren growing up. I was working too hard when my own children grew up, and I don't want to make the same mistake with my grandchildren.
You must be so proud that you've come probably the closest that you'll ever get to your father and his career.
Well, I'm certainly very proud of my father. He was a great old-fashioned sort of cop, and he was we were all proud of him. He did 37 years. He made it all the way from, he left school at 13 in Braintree. He finished up as Deputy Chief Constable of Essex. My grandparents were both in service, at Marks Hall in Essex. Our family's come a long way. Very proud of him. But I'm proud of Essex. I love Essex. I'm proud of Essex Police. I think our officers do a great job, and I'm pleased to have been part of that.
By the time you retire, you will have notched up 4 years?
Yes, it'll be just shy of 4 years. 3.5 years will have been the term. But of course, everyone forgets that a year before the election, we were working very hard to understand what the job was about and to think about the manifesto and to win an election, which was jolly hard work. So it'll have been 4.5 years of pretty hard work.
You've actually invented the role, haven't you? Before we had these useless, what were they called?
Police authorities, but your word, not mine. But
yeah, they didn't do a lot, and you do emphasise that you're on the same take as them, but you're actually achieving stuff. Come on, everybody knows that they did nothing.
Well, we're doing different things. I'd like to think we're more effective than your police authority. I've built up a really professional team. It's not just about me. Lindsay Whitehouse, my deputy, who stood forward to this role. He's not a politician. He came in to help me do a really professional job, and I'm proud of what we as a team and with all of our staff have managed to do. And I'm proud of how Essex Police have responded. We've appointed a good chief constable. He's leading a police force that's really determined to do the best job it can.
You've been the dream team, haven't you, with Stephen Kavanagh? Your appointee, you've kept a close watch on him. How's it going to survive your loss? Will he be firing on one propeller?
No, people move on all the time, don't they? This has been my third big role in life. And you move on, you always look forward. I always look forward. And the whole point about today really is saying we're looking forward. This isn't about, I'm looking forward to a year of very hard work up to the time I finish. We're laying the foundations for Essex Police. Moving forward, it needs to have, and it will have a really secure future. Is it going to be challenging? Yes, of course it'll be challenging. There'll be lots to confront. But I think we're in a really good place to do that.
I can't imagine you putting yourself with a pipe and cigars and watching afternoon TV. Come on, a charity or an organisation is going to snap you up. Have you had any offers yet at all to head up the hospice group or?
No, certainly not. And of course, I've only made this announcement this morning. But I have other interests I've kept going.
What are they?
Well, I sing. So do I sing enough? I sing in one of the really good local choirs, and I'm a hopeless attender at rehearsals. I enjoy my music. I haven't even launched my boat this year. I've been so busy. But I'm involved at Broomfield Hospital. I'm a non-executive director there. I'd like to give them more time. I gave them a lot more time in the year before I became PCC. I've kept my obligations. I've met my obligations there, but I'd like to do more. I'm very involved with Chelmsford Cathedral. I run the choral foundation there. So there are many things I do, and there may be others, but this really is retirement.
So you'll be coming on song for your 3 young and vivacious grandchildren. Can I say I'll see you in some local parks pushing the swings?
Well, yeah, I am out there when they come to stay. They'll be with us shortly, and we certainly have a good time locally. They love coming up to Essex. Thank you.
Steve.
Great.
Sweater by the fireside, Sunday morning, go for a ride, doing the garden, digging the weeds, who could ask for more? Will you still need me, will you still feed me, when I'm 64? Every summer we can rent a cottage in the Isle of Wight. If it's not too dear, we shall scrimp and save our grandchildren on your knee. Vera, Chuck, and Dave, send me a postcard, drop me a line, stating point of view. Indicate precisely what you mean to say. You're sincerely wasting away. Give me your answer, fill in a form, mine forevermore. Will you still need me? Will you still feed me when I'm 64? When I'm 64.